Novel Stream presents Gents on the Lynch by Robert E. Howard. This title was chosen to be recorded by our patrons. If you would like to participate in nominating future titles that will appear on our channel, become our patron on YouTube. Blue Lizard, Colorado, September 1st, 1879. Mr. Washington Bearfield, Antioch, Colorado. Dear Brother Wash, well, Wash, I reckon you think you air smart persuading me to quit my job with the 7-prong pitchfork outfit and come way up here in the mountains to hunt gold. I knowed from the start I warn't no prospector, but you talk so much you got me addled in believing what you said, and the first thing I knowed I had quit my job and withdrawed from the race for sheriff of Antioch and was on my way. Now I think about it. It is a dern funny thing you got so anxious for me to go prospecting just as elections was coming up. You never before showed no anxiety for me to get rich finding gold or no other way. I am going to hunt me a quiet spot and set down and study this over for a few hours, and if I decide you had some personal reason for wanting me out of Antioch, I aim to make you hard to catch. All my humiliating experiences in Blue Lizard is your fault, and the more I think about it, the madder I get. And yet it all come from my generous nature, which can't endure to see a feller critter in distress onless I got him that way myself. Well, about 4 days after I left Antioch, I hove into the Blue Lizard country one forenoon, riding Satanta and leading my pack mule, and I was passing through a canyon about 3 miles from the camp when I heard dogs baying. The next minute, I seen 3 of them setting around a big oak tree barking fit to bust your eardrums. I rode up to see what they'd treed, and I'm a Injun if it warn't a human being. It was a tall man without no hat nor gun in his scabbard, and he was cussing them dogs so vigorous he didn't hear me till I rode up and says, "Hey, what you doin' up there?" He liked to fell out of the crotch he was setting in, and then he looked down at me very sharp for an instant and said, "I taken refuge from them vicious beasts. I was goin' along mindin' my own business when they taken in after me. I think they got hydrophoby. I'll give you $5 if you'll shoot 'em. I lost my gun." "I don't want no $5, I says, "but I ain't goin' to shoot 'em. They're peculiar-looking critters and they may be valuable. I notice the funnier-looking a animal is, the more money they're generally wuth. I'll shoo 'em off." So I got down and says, "Git." And they immediately laid holt of my legs, which was very irritating because I didn't have no other boots but them. So I fotched each one of them fool critters a hearty kick in the rear, and they give a yowl and scooted for the tall timber. "You can come down now," I says. "Durn it, them varmints has ruined my boots." "Take mine," says he, sliding down and yanking off his boots. "Oh, I don't want to do that," I says, but he says, "I insists. It's all I can do for you. Witherington T. Jones always pays his debts, even in adversity. You behold in me a lone critter buffeted on the winds of chance, penniless and friendless but grateful. Take my boots, kind stranger, do." Well, I was embarrassed and sorry for him, so I said all right and taken his boots and give him mine. They was too big for him, but he seemed mighty pleased when he hauled 'em on. Hisson was very handsome, all fancy stitching. He shaken my hand and said I'd made him very happy, but all to once he bust into tears and sobbed. "Poor Joe." "Poor who?" I asked. "Joe," says he, wiping his eyes on my bandana. "My partner up on our claim in the hills. I warned him agin drinkin' a gallon of corn juice to inoculate hisself agin snakebite, before the snake bit him. But he wouldn't listen, so now he's writhin' in the throes of delirium tremens. It would bust your heart to hear the way he shrieks for me to shoot the polka-dotted rhinoceroses which he thinks is nowin' his toes. I left him tied hand and foot and howlin' that a striped elephant was squattin' on his bosom, and I went to Blue Lizard for medicine. I got it, But them cussed dogs scared my hoss and he got away from me, and it'll take me till midnight to get back to our claim afoot. Poor Joe'll be a ravin' corpse by then." Well, I never heard of a corpse raving, but I couldn't stand the idiot of a man dying from the DTs, so I shucked my pack off of my mule and said, "Here, take this mule and skeet for your claim. He'll be better'n walkin'. I'd lend you Satan to, only he won't let nobody but me ride him." Mr. Witherington T. Jones was plumb overcome by emotion. He shaken my hand again and said, "My noble friend, I'll never forget this." And then he jumped on the mule and lit out, and from the way he was kicking the critter's ribs I reckoned he'd pull into his claim before noon, if it was anywheres within 100 miles of there. He sure warn't wasting no time. I could see that. I hung his boots onto my saddle horn, and I had started gathering up my plunder when I heard men yelling, and then a whole gang with Winchesters come busting through the trees, and they seen me and hollered, "Where is he?" "We heard the dogs bayin' over here," says a little short one. "I don't hear 'em now, but they must have had him treed somewheres clost by." "Oh, Mr. Jones," I said. "Well, don't worry about him. He's all right. I druv the dogs off and lent him my mule to get back to his claim." At this they let forth loud frenzied yells. It was plumb amazing. Here I just rescued a feller human from a pack of ferocious animals, and these hombres acted like I did a crime or something. "He helped him get away," they hollered. "Let's lynch him, the derned outlaw." "Who you callin' a outlaw?" I demanded. "I'm a stranger in these parts. I'm headin' for Blue Lizard to work me a claim." "You just helped a criminal to escape," gnashed they, notably a big black-bearded galoot with a sawed-off shotgun. "This feller Jones, as you call him, tried to rob a stagecoach over on Cochise Mountain less'n an hour ago. The guard shot his pistol out of his hand and his hoss got hit too, so he broke away on foot. We sot the dogs on his trail, and we'd have had him by now if you hadn't buted in. Now the dogs can't track him no more. Call him back and set him on the mule's trail," see just a squint-eyed cuss. "As for you, you cussed Texas hillbilly, you keep on travelin'. We don't want no man like you in Blue Lizard." "Go to the devil, you flat-nosed buzzard," I retort with typical Southern courtesy. "This here's a free country. I come up here to hunt gold, and I aim to hunt it if I have to lick every prospector in Lizard Canyon. You can't ride me just because I made a honest mistake that anybody could have made. Anyway, I'm the loser, 'cause he got off with my mule." "Aw, come on and let's find the dogs," says a bow-legged gun-toter with warts. So they went off up the canyon, breathing threats and vengeance, and I taken my plunder on my shoulder and went on down the canyon, leading Satan to. I put on Mr. Jones's boots first, and they was too small for me, of course, but I could wear 'em in a pinch. That there is a joke, Wash, but I don't suppose you got sense enough to see the p'int. I soon come to the edge of the camp, which was spread all over the place where the canyon widened out and shallowed, and the first man I seen was old Pulp Williams. You remember him, Wash. We knowed him over to Trinidad when we first come to Colorado with the 7-prong pitchfork outfit. I hailed him and asked him where I could find a good claim, and he said all the good ones had been took. So I said, well, I'd strike out up in the hills and hunt me one, and he says, "What you know about prospectin'? I advises you to get a job of workin'. Some other man's claim at day wages till they's a new strike up in the hills somewheres. They's bound to be one any day, because the mountains is full of prospectors which got here too late to get in on this'n. Plenty of jobs here at big wages, because nobody wants to work. They all wants to wade creeks till they stub their fool toe on a pocket of nuggets." "All right," I said, "I'll pitch my camp down on the creek." "You better not," says he. "These mountains is full of hydrophoby skunks. They crawls in your blankets at night and bites you, and you foam at the mouth and go bite your best friends. Now, it just happens I got a spare cabin which I ain't using. The feller who had it rented ain't with us this mornin' account of a extra ace in a poker game last night. I'll rent it to you dirt cheap $10 a day. You'll be safe from them cussed skunks there. So I said, all right, I don't want to get hydrophoby. So I give him $10 in advance and put my plunder in the cabin which was on a slope west of the camp, and hobbled Satan to graze. He said I better look out or somebody would steal Satan to. He said Mustang Sterling and his outlaws was hiding in the hills close by and terrorizing the camp which didn't even have a sheriff yet, because folks hadn't had time to elect one. But they was getting so sick of being robbed all the time they probably would soon, and maybe organize a vigilante committee too. But I warn't scared of anybody stealing Satan to. A stranger had better take a cougar by the whiskers than to monkey with Satan to. That hoss has got a disposition like a sore-tailed rattlesnake. Well, while we was talking I seen a gal come out from amongst the cluster of stores and saloons and things, and head up the canyon with a bucket in her hand. She was so purty my heart skipped a beat and my corns begun to throb. That's a sure sign of love at first sight. Who's that gal? I asked. Hannah Sprague, says Pulp. The belle of Blue Lizard, but you needn't start casting sheep's eyes at her. They's a dozen young bucks sparkin' her already. I think Blaze Wellington's the favorite to put his brand onto her, though. She wouldn't look twisted at a hillbilly like you. I might remove the competition, I suggested. You better not try no Wolf Mountain rough stuff in Blue Lizard, warned he. The folks is so worked up over all these robberies and killin's they're just in a mood to lynch somebody, especially a stranger. But I give no heed. Folks is always wanting to lynch me, and quite a few has tried, as numerous tombstones on the boundless prairies testifies. Where's she goin' with that bucket? I asked him, and he said, she's talkin' beer to her old man which is workin' a claim up the creek. Well, listen, I says, you get over there behind that thicket and when she comes past you make a noise like a Injun. What kind of damn foolishness is this? He demanded. You want to stampede the whole camp. Don't make a loud whoop, I says. Just make it loud enough for her to hear it. Air you crazy? Says he. No, durn it, I said fiercely, because she was tripping along purty fast. Get in there and do like I say. I'll rush up from the other side and pretend to rescue her from the Injuns, and that'll make her like me. I mistrust you're a blasted fool, he grumbled, but I'll do it just this onset. He snuck into the thicket which she'd have to pass on the other side, and I circled around so she couldn't see me till I was ready to rush out and save her from being sculped. Well, I warn't hardly in place when I heard a kind of mild war whoop, and it sounded just like a Blackfoot, only not so loud. But immediately there come the crack of a pistol and another yell which warn't subdued like the first. It was lusty and energetic. I run towards the thicket, but before I could get into the open trail old Pulp come be-illin, out of the backside of the clump with his hands to the seat of his breeches. You planned this a purpose, you snake in the grass, he squalled. Get outta my way. Why, Pulp, I says, what happened? I bet you knowed she had a derringer in her stocking, he howled as he run past me with his pants smoking. It's all your fault. When I whooped she pulled it and shot into the bresh. Don't speak to me. I'm lucky that I warn't hit in a vital spot. I'll get even with you for this if it takes 100 years. He headed on into the deep bresh, and I run around the thicket and seen Hannah Sprague peering into it with her gun smoking in her hand. She looked up as I come onto the trail, and I taken off my hat and said perlite, Howdy, miss, can I be of no assistance to you? I just shot a Injun, says she. I heard him holler. You might go in there and get the sculp if you don't mind. I'd like to have it for a souvenir. I'll be glad to, miss, I says gallantly. I'll likewise Kyra and tan it for you myself. Oh, thank you, sir, she says, dimpling. It's a pleasure to meet a real gent like you. The pleasure's all mine, I assured her, and went into the bresh and stomped around a little and then come out and says, I'm arful sorry, miss, but the varmint ain't nowheres to be found. You must have jest winged him. If you want me to, I'll take his trail and run him down. Oh, I wouldn't think of puttin' you to such trouble, she says, much to my relief, because I was just thinking that if she did demand a sculp, the only thing I could do would be to catch old Pulp and sculp him, and I'd hate to have to do that. I bet it would have made him arful mad. But she looked me over admiringly and says, I'm Hannah Sprague, hooray you. I knowed you the minute I seen you, I says. The fame of your beauty has reached clean to Wolf Mountain, Texas. I'm Pike Bearfield. Glad to meet you, Mr. Bearfield, says she. They must grow big men in Texas. Well, I got to go now. Pap gets arful tetchy if he don't get his beer along with his dinner. I'd admire powerful to call on you this evenin', I says, and she says, well, I dunno. Mr. Blaze Wellington was goin' to call. He can't come, I says. Why, how do you know? She asked, surprised. He said, a unforeseen circumstance, I says gently. It ain't happened to him yet, but it's goin' to right away. Well, she says, kind of confused, I reckon in that case you can come on if you want. We live in that cabin down yonder by that big fir, but when you get within hearin' holler and tell us who you be if it's after dark. Pap is arful nervous account of all these outlaws which is robbin' people. So I said I would, and she went on, and I headed for the camp. People give me some suspicious looks, and I heard a lot of folks talking about this here Mustang Sterling and his gang. Seems like them critters hid in the hills and robbed somebody nearly every day and night, and nobody could hardly get their gold out of camp without gettin' stuck up. But I didn't have no gold yet, and wouldn't have been scared of Mustang Sterling if I had, so I went on to the biggest saloon, which they called the Belle of New York. I taken a dram and asked the bartender if he knowed Blaze Wellington. He said sure he did, and I asked him where Blaze Wellington was, and he p'inted out a young buck which was setting at a table with his head down on his hands like he was trying to study out something. So I went over and sat down opposite him, and he looked up and seen me, and fell out of his chair backwards hollering, "Don't shoot." "Why, how did you know?" I asked, surprised. "By your evil face," he gibbered. "Go ahead, do your wust." "They ain't no use to get hysterical," I says. "If you'll be reasonable, nobody won't get hurt." "I won't tell you where it's hid," he defied, getting onto his feet and looking like a cornered wharf rat. "Where what's hid?" I asked in amazement. At this he looked kind of dumbfounded. "Say," says he cautiously, "ain't you one of Mustang Sterling's spies after the gold?" "No, I ain't," I says angrily. "I just come here to ask you like a gent not to call on Hannah Sprague tonight." "What the devil?" says he, looking kind of perplexed and relieved and mad all at the same time. "What you mean, not call on Hannah?" "Because I am," I says, hitching my guns forward. "Who the devil air you?" he demanded, convulsively picking up a beer mug like he aimed to throw it at me. "Pike Bearfield of Wolf Mountain," I says, and he says, "Oh," and after a minute he puts the beer mug down and stood there studying a while. Then he says, "Why, Bearfield, they warn't no use in you threatenin' me. I bet you think I'm in love with Hannah Sprague. Well, I ain't. I'm a friend of her old man, that's all. I've been keepin' his gold over to my shack, guardin' it for him, so Mustang Sterling's outlaws wouldn't get it, and the old man is so grateful he wants me to marry the gal. But I don't care nothin' about her. To tell you the truth, if it warn't that I like the old man, I'd throw up the job, it's so dangerous. Mustang Sterling has got spies in the camp, and they dogs me night and day. I thought you was one of 'em when I seen your arful face. Well, I'm glad the old man's going to send it out on the stage tomorrow. It's been an awful strain on me and my partner, which is over at the shack now. Somebody's got to stay there on guard all the time, or them cussed outlaws would come right in and tear the shack apart and find where I got it hid. Tonight'll be the wust. They'll make a desperate effort to get it before morning. You mean old man Sprague wants you to marry Hannah because your garden is gold? I asked, and he says yes, but the responsibility was aging him prematurely. I says, looky here, let me take this job off in your hands. Let me guard the gold tonight. I hates to see a promising young man like you wore down to a nubbin by care and worry. I hate to do that, he demurred, but I said, come on, be a good feller. I'll do as much for you some time. He thought it over a while, shaking his head whilst I was on needles and pins, and then he stuck out his hand and said, I'll do it, shake. But don't tell nobody. I wouldn't do it for nobody but you. What's that noise? Because we heard a lot of men running up the street and yelling, get your guns ready, boys. We're right on his trail. Somebody hollered, who? And somebody else yelled, Jones. The hounds picked up his foot tracks whilst we was trying to get him after the mules. He must have jumped off of the mule and doubled back a foot. We've trailed him right down Main Street. Then somebody else whooped, they're going into the Belle of New York. We got him cornered. Don't let him get away. The next minute here come them 3 fool bloodhounds be-illin' in at the front door and grabbed me by the hind leg again. It was most annying. I dunno when I was ever so sick of a pack of hounds in my life, but I controlled my temper and merely jerked 'em loose from my leg and throwed 'em out the winder, and they run off. Then a crowd of faces jammed in the door and looked at me wildly and said, you again. I recognized Blackbeard and Squint-Eye and Shorty and Warts and the rest of the men which was in the posse chasing Mr. Jones, and I said fretfully, gall darn it, why ain't you all lemme alone? But they ignored my remark, and Squint-Eye said, I thought we told you not to stop in Blue Lizard. Before I could think of anything insulting enough to say in response, Warts give a yelp and pee-inted at my legs. Look there, he howled. He's got on Jones's boots. I was on the stagecoach when Jones tried to hold it up and he had on a mask, but I remember them boots. Don't you remember this hillbilly didn't have on no boots when we seen him before? He traded boots with Jones to fool the dogs. No wonder they wouldn't foller the mule. He's a derned outlaw. He knowed what Jones's name was. He's one of Sterling's spies. Get him. I started to tell Blaze to tell him I was all right. But at this moment, Shorty was so overcome by excitement that he throwed a cuspidor at me. I ducked and it hit Blaze betwixt the eyes, and he curled up under the table with a holler gasp. Now look what you done, I says wrathfully, but all Shorty says is to holler, grab him, boys. Here's where we starts cleaning up this camp right now. Let the hangings commence. If he hadn't made that last remark, I probably wouldn't have broke his arm when he tried to stab me with his bowie, but I'm kind of sensitive about being hung. I would have avoided violence if I could have, but such remarks convinced me that them idiots was liable to do me bodily harm, especially when some of 'em grabbed me around the legs, and 5 or 6 more tried to twist my arms around behind my back. So I give a heave and slung them loose from me, which was hanging onto my arms, and then I asked the others calmly and with dignity to let go of me before I injured 'em fatally. But they replied profanely that I was a dadgasted outlaw, and they was going to hang me if it was the last thing any of 'em done. They also tried to wrestle me off my feet, and Blackbeard hit me over the head with a beer bottle. This made me mad, so I walked over to the bar with 9 or 10 of 'em hanging onto me and bracing their feet in a futile effort to stop me, and I stooped and tore up a 10-foot section of brass rail, and at the first swipe, I laid out Blackbeard and Squint-Eye and Warts, and at the second I laid out 4 more gents which was perfect strangers to me, and when I heaved her up for the third swipe, they warrant nobody in the saloon but me and them on the floor. It is remarkable the number of men you can fotch at one lick with a 10-foot section of brass railing. The way the survivors stampeded out the front door yelling blue murder, you'd have thought it was the first time anybody had ever used a brass rail on 'em. Blaze was beginning to come to, so I hauled him out from under the table and lugged him out onto the street with me. Some fellers on the other side of the street immediately started shooting at me, so I drawed my pistols and shot back at 'em, and they broke and run every which a way. So I got Blaze onto my back and started up the street with him, and after I'd went a few hundred yards he could walk hisself, though he weaved considerable, and he taken the lead and led me to his cabin, which was back of some stores and close to the bank of the creek. They warn't nobody in sight but a loafer setting under a tree on the bank fishing, with his slouch hat pulled down to shade his eyes. The door was shet, so Blaze hollered, still kind of dizzy, "It's me, Branner, open up." So another young feller opened the door and looked out cautious with a double-barreled shotgun, and Blaze says to me, "Wait here whilst I go in and get the gold." So I did, and after a while he come out lugging a good-sized buckskin poke, which I judged from the weight they must be several $1,000s worth of nuggets in there. "I'll never forget this," I said warmly. "You go tell Hannah I can't come to see her tonight because I'm guardin' her old man's gold. I'll see her tomorrow after the stage coach has left with it." "I'll tell her, pal," says he with emotion, shaking my hand, so I headed for my cabin, feeling I had easily won the first battle in the campaign for Hannah Sprague's hand. Imagine that poor sap Blaze throwing away a chance like that. I felt plumb sorry for him for being so addle-headed. The sun was down by the time I got back to my cabin, and onset I thought somebody was following me, and I looked around, but it warn't nobody but the feller I'd seen fishing, trudging along about 100 yards behind me with his pole onto his shoulder. Well, when I arrived at my cabin, I seen a furtive figure duck out the back way. It looked like old Pulp, so I called to him, but he scooted off amongst the trees. I decided I must have been mistook, because likely old Pulp was still off somewheres sulking on account of getting shot in the britches. He was a unreasonable old cuss. I went in and throwed the buckskin poke on the table and lit a candle, and just then I heard a noise at the winder and wheeled quick just in time to see somebody jerk his face away from the winder. I run to the door and seen somebody sprinting off through the trees, and was just fixing to take a shot at him when I recognized that old slouch hat. I wondered what that fool fisherman had followed me and looked in at my winder for, and I wondered why he run off so fast, but I'd already found out that Blue Lizard was full of idiots, so I give the matter no more thought. I ain't one of these here fellers which wastes their time trying to figure out why things is like they is, and why people does things like they does. I got better employment for my spare time, such as sleeping. Satan to come up to the door and nickered, and I give him some oats, and then I built a fire in the fireplace and cooked some bacon and made some coffee, and I just got through eating and cleaned up the pot and skillet when somebody hailed me outside. I quick blowed out the candle and stepped to the door with a gun in each hand. I could see a tall figure standing in the starlight, so I asked who the devil he was and what he wanted. "A friend of old man Sprague's," says he. "Huddleston is the name, my enormous young friend, Carius Z. Huddleston. Mr. Sprague sent me over to help you guard his gold tonight." That didn't set well with me, because it looked like old man Sprague didn't think I was capable of taking care of it by myself, and I said so right out. "Not at all," says Mr. Huddleston. "He's so grateful to you for assumin' the responsibility that he said he couldn't endure it if you come to any harm on account of it, so he sent me to help you." Well, that was all right. It looked like old man Sprague had took a fancy to me already, even before he'd saw me, and I felt that I was nigh as good as married to Hannah already. So I told Mr. Huddleston to come in, and I lit the candle and shut the door. He was a tall man with the biggest black mustache I ever seen, and he had on a frock-tail coat and a broad-brim hat. I seen 2 ivory-handled six-shooters under his coat-tails. His eyes kind of bulged in the candlelight when he seen the big poke on the table, and he asked me was that the gold, and I said yes. So he hauled out a bottle of whiskey and said, "Well, my gigantic young friend, let's drink to old man Sprague's gold. May it arrive at its proper destination." So we had a drink, and I sat down on the bench, and he sat on a rawhide-bottomed chair, and he got to telling me stories, and he knowed more things about more people than I ever seen. He told me about a feller named Paul Revere which thrived during the Revolution when we licked the Britishers, and I got all het up hearing about him. He said the Britishers was going to sneak out of a town named Boston, which I jedge must have been a right sizable cotton or mining camp or something, and was going to fall on the people unawares and confiscate their stills and weapons and steers and things. But one of Paul's friends signaled him what was going on by swinging a lantern, and Paul forked his cayuse and fogged it down the trail to warn the folks. When he was telling about Paul's friend signaling him, Mr. Huddleston got so excited, he grabbed the candle and went over to the west winder and waved the candle back and forth 3 times to show me how it was done. It was a grand story, wash, and I got goose bumps on me just listening to it. Well, it was getting late by now, and Mr. Huddleston asked me if I warn't sleepy. I said no, and he said, "Go ahead and lay down and sleep. I'll stand guard the rest of the night." "Shucks," I said, "I ain't sleepy, you get some rest." "We'll throw dice to see who sleeps first," says he, hauling out a pair, but I says, "No, sir, it's my job. I'm settin' up with the gold. You go on and lay down on that bunk over there if you want to." Well, for a minute Mr. Huddleston got a most peculiar expression onto his face, or it might have been the way the candlelight shined on it, because for a minute he looked just like I've seen men look who was ready to pull out their pistol on me. Then he says, "All right. I believe I will take a snooze. You might as well kill the rest of that whiskey. I got all I want." So he went over to the bunk, which was in a corner where the light didn't shine into very good, and he sot down on it to take off his boots. But he'd no sooner sot than he give a artful yell and bounded convulsively out into the middle of the room, clutching at his rear, and I seen a BR trap hanging onto the seat of his breeches. I instantly knowed old Pulp had sotted in the bunk for me, the revengeful old polecat. From the way Mr. Huddleston was hollering, I knowed it warn't only pants which was nipped betwixt the jaws. They was quite a chunk of Mr. Huddleston betwixt 'em too. He went prancing around the cabin like one of them whirling dervishes, and his language was plumb terrible. "Get it off, blast you," he howled, but he was circling the room at such speed I couldn't catch him, so I grabbed the chain which dangled from the trap and give a heave and tore it loose from him by main strength. The seat of his pants and several freckles come with it, and the howls he'd let out previous warrant a circumstance to the one which he emitted now, also bounding about 7 foot in the air besides. "You!" screamed he, and I likewise give a beller of amazement because his mustache had come off and revealed a familiar face. "Witherington T. Jones," I roared, dumbfounded. "What the devil you doin' here in disguise?" "Now," says he, pulling a gun. "Hands up, curse you," or I knocked the gun out of his hand before he could pull the trigger, and I was so overcome with resentment that I taken him by the neck and shaken him till his spurs flew off. "Is this any way to treat a man as risked his reputation to rescue you from bloodhounds?" I inquired with passion. "Where's my mule, you ornery polecat?" I had forgot about his other gun, but he hadn't. but I was shaking him so energetic that somehow he missed me even when he had the muzzle almost aging my belly. The bullet tore the hide over my ribs, and the powder burnt me so severe that I lost my temper. "So you tries to murder me after obtaining my mule under false pretenses," I bellered, taking the gun away from him and impulsively slinging him across the cabin. "You ain't no friend of old man Sprague's." At this moment he got hold of a butcher knife I used to slice bacon with and come at me, yelling, "Slim, Mike, Arizona, Jackson, where'n hell air you?" I taken the blade in my arm muscles and then grabbed him, and we was wrestling all over the place when 6 men come storming through the door with guns in their hands. One of them yelled, "I thought you said you'd wait till he was asleep or drunk before you signaled us." "He wouldn't go to sleep," howled Mr. Jones, spitting out a piece of my ear he'd bit off. "Damn it, do something. Don't you see he's KL'ing me?" But we was so tangled up they couldn't shoot me without hitting him, so they clubbed their pistols and come for me. So I swung Mr. Jones off his feet and throwed him at him. They was all in a bunch, and he hit 'em broadside and knocked 'em all over, and they crashed into the table and upside it, and the candle went out. The next minute they was a awful commotion going on as they started fighting each other in the dark, each one thinking it was me he had holt of. I was feeling for him when the back door busted open, and I had a brief glimpse of a tall figure darting out, and it was carrying something on its shoulder. Then I remembered that the poke had been on that table. Mr. Jones had got hold of the gold and was skedaddling with it. I run out of the back door after him, just as a mob of men come whooping and yelling up to the front door with torches and guns and ropes. I heard one of them yell, "Somebody's fighting in there, listen at 'em." Somebody else yelled, "Maybe the whole gang's in there with the hillbilly, get 'em." So they went smashing into the cabin just as I run in amongst the trees after Mr. Jones. And there I was stumped. I couldn't see where he went, and it was too dark to find his trail. Then all to onset I heard Satan to squeal and a man yelled for help, and they come a crash like a man makes when a hoss bucks him off into a blackjack thicket. I run in the direction of the noise, and by the starlight I seen Satan to grazing, and a pair of human legs sticking out of the brush. Mr. Jones had tried to get away on Satan to. "I told you he wouldn't let nobody but me ride him," I says as I hauled him out, but his language ain't fit to be repeated. The poke was lying close by, busted open. When I picked it up, it didn't look right. I struck a match and looked. That there poke was full of nothing but scrap iron. I was so stunned, I didn't hardly know what I was doing when I taken the poke in one hand, and Mr. Jones' neck in the other, and lugged 'em back to the cabin. The mob had Mr. Jones's 6 men outside tied up, and was wiping the blood off 'em. And I seen Shorty and Blackbeard and Squint Eye and the others, and about 100 more. "They're Sterling's men all right," says Warts, "but where's Mustang and that hillbilly? Anyway, let's string these up right here." "You ain't," says Blackbeard. "You all elected me sheriff before we come up here, and I aims to uphold the law. Who's that?" "It's old man Sprague," says somebody, as a bald-headed old coot come prancing through the crowd waving a shotgun. "What you want?" says Blackbeard. "Don't you see we're busy?" "I demands justice," howled old man Sprague. "I been abused." At this moment I shouldered through the crowd with a heavy heart, and slaying the poke of scrap iron down in front of him. "There it is," I says, "and I'll swear it ain't been monkeyed with since Blaze Wellington gave it to me." "Who's that?" howled Sprague. "The hillbilly," howled the mob. "Grabs him." "No, you don't," I roared, drawing a gun. "I've took enough off of you blue lizard jackasses. I'm a honest man, and I've brung back Mr. Jones to prove it." I then flang him down in front of them, and Warts give a howl and pounced on him. "Jones, nothing," he yelled. That's Mustang Sterling. I confesses, says Mustang groggily. Lock me up where I can be safe from that hillbilly. The critter ain't human. Somebody listen to me, howled Old Man Sprague, jumping up and down. I demands to be heard. I done the best I could, I roared, plumb out of patience. When Blaze Wellington give me your gold to guard, what the devil air you talkin' about? He squalled. That wuthless scoundrel never had no gold of mine. What? I hollered, going slightly crazy. Just then I seen a feller in the crowd I recognized. I made a jump and grabbed him. Branner, I roared. You was at Wellington's shack when he give me that poke. You tell me quick what this is all about, or Lego, he gasped. It warn't Sprague's gold we hid. It was ourn. We couldn't get it out camp because we knowed Sterling's spies was watchin' us all the time. When you jumped Blaze in the Belle of New York, he seen a chance to get 'em off our necks. He filled that poke with scrap iron and give it to you where the spy could see it and hear what was said. The spy didn't know whether it was our gold or Sprague's, but we knowed if he thought you had it, Sterling would go after you and let us alone. He did, too, and that give Blaze a chance to sneak out early tonight with it. And that ain't all, bellered Old Man Sprague. He taken Hannah with him, they've eloped. My yell of mortal agony drowned out his demands for the sheriff to pursue him. Hannah, eloped. It was too much for a critter to endure. Aw, don't you keer, partner, says Shorty, slapping me on the back with the arm I hadn't busted. You been vindicated as a honest citizen. You're the hero of the hour. Spare your praise, I says bitterly. I'm the victim of female perfidy. I have lost my faith in my feller man, and my honest heart is busted all to perdition. Leave me to my sorrow. So they gathered up their prisoners and went away in awed silence. I am a ruined man. All I want to do is to become a hermit and forget my aching heart in the untrodden wilderness. Your poor brother Pike. P.S. The next morning. I have just learnt that after I withdrawed from the campaign and left Antioch, you come out for sheriff and got elected. So that's why you persuaded me to come up here. I am heading for Antioch, and when I get there I am going to whoop you within an inch of your worthless life. I don't care if you air sheriff of Antioch. I am going to kick the seat of your britches up around your neck and sweep the streets with you till you don't know whether yo are setting or standing. Hoping this finds you in good health and spirits, I am your affectionate brother, P. Bearfield Esquire. Thank you for listening.